wants to stay up to watch his first Raiders game and this goddamn baseball team. Pushed it back to 11:35. I live in Burrillville, Rhode Island. I don't have time to stay up for that. Stupid antitrust exemption. Major League Baseball ruining my night. I'm sorry, Bobby, you can't watch the game. Go back to sleep on your cot.
On October 5th, 2013, the Oakland Athletics beat the Detroit Tigers 1-0 in Game 2 of the American League Divisional Series. The game was played in the Oakland Coliseum, home to both the Athletics and the professional football team, the Oakland Raiders. The following night, the Raiders played the San Diego Chargers at home. Converting from a baseball to a football field is a complicated task that requires many hours of labor and thousands of dollars. The Raiders were forced to push the start time of their game back to 11:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The change in start time for the Raiders game cost the team thousands of dollars in revenue and in viewers, as well as causing a conflict with the Oakland Athletics. Major League Baseball prohibits teams from relocating to a different city without the consent of Major League Baseball management. Major League Baseball is allowed to control the actions of the autonomous owners due to its exemption from the United States antitrust legislation. The origins of the exemption from antitrust legislation can be traced back to 1922 in the landmark Supreme Court case between the Federal League and the newly minted Major League Baseball. The Federal League, impressed with the success of the merger of the American and National League, wanted to join in the merger. The American and National Leagues were not in favor and denied the Federal League's proposal. The Federal League filed a lawsuit against the MLB on the grounds that the league violated the Sherman Antitrust Law. The Sherman Antitrust Law, passed by Congress in 1890, protects against monopolies and unfair competition practices in the United States. The lawsuit was ultimately settled. However, the Baltimore Orioles filed a counter-antitrust lawsuit. The Supreme Court ruled in unanimous favor of Baltimore. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the opinion for the case, in which he said that since baseball activities are classified as intrastate commerce rather than interstate commerce, and is therefore not subject to jurisdiction under the Sherman Antitrust Act. Again, in 1953, baseball was under the scrutiny for its violations of antitrust legislation. In Toulson v. New York Yankees, several minor league ballplayers questioned the legality of the Reserve Clause. They argued that the Reserve Clause violated the Clayton Antitrust Act of 1914. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the New York Yankees. The opinion states, quote, Congress has no intention of including the business of baseball within the scope of the federal antitrust laws, end quote. This decision is monumental because it did not analyze the case based on the law, but rather the intent of Congress. The court ruled in favor of baseball because it was deemed favorable to the American culture. The third landmark Supreme Court case, Flood v. Kuhn, took place in 1972. Curt Flood, an outfielder, was traded from the St. Louis Cardinals to the Philadelphia Phillies. Flood wrote a letter to Commissioner Kuhn requesting to be a free agent. Kuhn did not agree. Flood, in return, then filed an antitrust lawsuit against Major League Baseball challenging the Reserve Clause. The Supreme Court once again favored MLB on the grounds that Congress has been inactive in enforcing the antitrust laws on MLB. This ruling further strengthened the precedent established in the Toulson case. These three Supreme Court cases leave many questions concerning the application of the exemption from antitrust laws. Each justice has the ability to make his or her own determination on the extent to which the exemption may be applied. Some justices may only allow the exemption to go as far as the Reserve Clause, while others may apply it to the exemption of Major League Baseball's actions. The lack of consensus makes it challenging for Major League Baseball to capitalize on the added benefits of being the only professional sports team with such an exemption and causes increasing confusion among the courts. Cases such as these were indirectly deciding factors in causing the conflict between the Oakland Athletics and the Oakland Raiders. This conflict was caused due to the fact that the Oakland Athletics could not move to another city without the permission of Major League Baseball. The impact of the exemption is not obvious for Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball is the only professional sports league that is allowed to sidestep congressional legislation. Other professional sports leagues, such as the NFL, have higher revenue and are increasing in popularity, whereas Major League Baseball is creating less revenue annually and has stagnant popularity. Additionally, with the abolishment of the Reserve Clause and the increasing strength of the Major League Baseball Players Association, the exemption loses much of its impact. Based upon federal law, the agreement between the Major League Baseball Players Association and Major League Baseball for collective bargaining places it outside the scope of judicial review for the antitrust legislation. The Major League Baseball Players Association is arguably the strongest in all of professional sports, but since the abolishment of the reserve clause, there has been 8 lockouts and over 1,000 player strikes. Based on these numbers, it is evident that the exemption does little to benefit Major League Baseball. In general, the United States Congress does less to regulate actions of professional sports leagues. Congress is more inclined to let anti-competitive activities occur if they are benefiting the consumer. For example, many professional sports teams have a draft. A draft is inherently anti-competitive because players are only allowed to take offers from the team that they were drafted by, regardless of the interest of other teams and the players themselves. Today, Major League Baseball primarily uses the exemption from the antitrust legislation when dealing with relocation of Major League teams. Major League Baseball invokes its privilege in order to maintain efficiency and cooperation within the leagues. Interestingly, although Major League Baseball attempts to control the relocation of teams, baseball has seen more movement in recent years within their respective leagues than any other professional sports league in America. However, the Oakland Athletics have repeatedly attempted to move from Oakland to other cities in California on the West Coast in order to prevent conflicts with the Raiders, such as the one that occurred during the 2013 ALDS. Major League Baseball continues to prohibit any such movement by the club. Should the antitrust exemption be lifted from Major League Baseball, not many things would change on the daily operations level of the league. It is not likely that the league would face more scrutiny from the U.S. government. The antitrust laws have been enacted to protect the consumer. If all exemptions are lifted from baseball, it is possible and even probable that the competitive balance would be erased, making for a less entertaining game. The consumer would not be benefiting from these changes, and the antitrust laws would be counterproductive. In terms of relocating teams, local markets could be damaged. Currently, Major League Baseball has markets to even out the profits among teams. Each team reserves some rights to local viewership based on geographic location. For example, the Seattle Mariners have rights to broadcast all the way from Washington to Montana and Idaho, while Pennsylvania is divided between the Pirates, Phillies, Orioles, and even the Yankees. Letting teams relocate without the approval of Major League Baseball would infringe on the rights of other teams already located in said area. However, at times these viewing rights are inconsequential because the games are nationally broadcasted under the consent of Major League Baseball. Not only did the Athletics lose thousands of dollars for their local broadcasting affiliate, but they were also dominated by Justin Verlander. Major League Baseball does not currently benefit from exemption of antitrust laws. With the abolishment of the reserve clause and strengthening of collective bargaining rights, the exemption is becoming increasingly irrelevant. Future policy changes seem unlikely due to their negligible effect and lack of priority in Congress. The exemption is irrelevant and does not benefit baseball the way it is widely publicized in the media. This can be seen in the numerous attempts by the Athletics to move out of Oakland and the way that Major League Baseball can say no without any challenge or any system of checks and balances. So it seems that all you die-hard fans will continue to suffer anytime the Athletics have a game the day before your beloved Raiders.